Hi, and welcome to another episode of Ebony Talks Birth on YouTube, and it's part of the Art of Midwifery podcast. So today I'm just having a chat with you myself. Got some great guests lined up coming up, and some things have been coming up when I've been talking to students, and feel like maybe it's a good time just to start thinking about where I'm coming from, and to be able to share some thoughts with you. I'm using some notes today from a presentation that I created called Birth in the Box, and just put my glasses on so I can see it as well. And thinking about how I understand the system, the NHS or whichever system is in place where you're working. Because I think when you understand it, if you have to work in it, even though you feel conflict, and I think that's something that many of us experience, and that's who this is aimed at, people, student midwives, and midwives who work within the system, the medicalised birth system that we have in most Western countries today. That there are ways of thinking to understand what it's about. When you sort of, I guess some people would say it's that feeling that you're just agreeing with it or going along with it, and that's not the case at all. You can work in a system. For some of us, we're going to have to. We need to pay bills. We might be the main earners in our family. We studied for 3 years to get to this point. And at the end of the day, in the UK, the NHS serves 700,000 births a year. We're not going to suddenly create an alternative overnight. I think perhaps in the long term, and I do hope in the long term, that I think it's inevitable actually that there are women and people out there who will create something that is an alternative, because for many of us that is deep within our hearts, within our bones, that there is a different way. But that flies in the face of what society creates and what is what we are able to do, because at the end of the day, like I said, 700,000 births a year. So I'm going to start right back at the beginning and think about where I came from to where I am today. I've got a few notes in front of me. So I've always thought of myself as walking between two worlds, because some of the time I've been, a big part of my career as a midwife has been within the NHS in the UK, and then I stay in it for a bit and then I get out. Usually something overwhelms me, and it's not overwhelms me. I feel this conflict within me that I find it so hard to continue. And often I'm quite creative. I do feel that I have ADHD, and it's something that I accept within me. I'm not diagnosed, but I feel that that's something that in some ways I've been challenged by it, but in other ways it makes me who I am. I'll have a creative splurge and I feel like I've got to get out. I've got to create this thing, do this thing. So right back to the beginning, I had one of my first baby I had within the NHS in 1995, and it was very much just a routine pregnancy. I didn't know about choice. I was 22, and which hospital do you want to be booked at? Which delivery suite do you want to have your baby? And also signed a piece of paper that said I would have my baby born within 12 hours if I followed this pathway, which was the active management of labour. So if I didn't dilate at the given rate of, I can't remember if it was like 1 centimetre an hour, then I would have my waters broken, I would have a drip, and etc. etc. Well, I scraped through without needing any of that, even though I spent my whole labour lying on my back with a monitor in place, even though I was a fit, healthy woman having a healthy baby. Nobody once said, do you want to change position? Do we even need to be doing monitoring? But I guess it was more medicalised back then, luckily I didn't have an episiotomy. I managed to birth my baby on my own, but I had a 2nd-degree tear, and I breastfed my baby for a year. Fabulous. Come second time round, I was friends with a group of other mums who were having home births. It was the National Childbirth Trust, the NCT, and it seemed like a natural thing to want to do that. And it was like, oh, that makes sense. I wouldn't have to go to hospital. I could stay at home with my baby, and the other baby would just be in bed because my eldest was only 22 months at the time. And there I did. I had my baby at home. I had a £9.2 baby, £9.4 baby, can't remember exactly. But that was in the dark. I was standing up. I was just in my own flow of oxytocin. I remember asking for the gas and air. I took the sniff and I thought, I can't do this. I just need to have my own breath. All I've read is Janet Velasquez' Active Birth book. And I experienced this completely different birth, which was definitely had a major impact on me, and in my sense of my inner capability and strength and, self-esteem, pride in myself, that I'd done this thing and birthed my baby this way. And then eventually I actually decided to become a midwife. At that point, I didn't think that wasn't in my head at all. So skip forward a couple of years, and I did my midwifery training with Bournemouth University, and I had incredible role models. It was a very feminist-led course, influenced by fantastic teachers and lecturers. Mary Cronk, the independent midwife, lived up the road from where the university was in the next town, and she was a big influence on me in terms of slides and presentations and birth stories that she would tell us about breech births at home and twin births at home and more complex births. And this belief, and she was obviously independent. And there was a midwifery list this was in the days of dial-up connection, where the internet was only just starting, and there was a list where everyone would write on the list. It was like a group, a Yahoo group. It didn't have Facebook or Instagram or anything like that. And there were all these people sharing their birth stories, and independent midwives sharing these births that span a whole breadth of possibility, which was so inspiring. And I would sit and read stories from America and American midwives, Midwifery Today, use of herbs, and Ina May was a massive influence, and the farm and what they had achieved in their stats. So I felt in my heart, this really was what it was like, I can see that this is possible. Birth is possible. We can birth our babies, and intervention should be just the smallest part of that we have an innate capability, and midwives are able to practice autonomously to support women to birth their babies using their own energy and in their own body, in their own ways, connecting with their bodies, that the mind-body-spirit connection was evident. So this is what was underpinning everything about me and where I wanted to go as a midwife. Then fast forward to my first, employment as a midwife, and I knew I wanted to be an independent midwife throughout my training. So I did set myself up to spend a lot of time with water birth, physiological third stage, all that stuff. Fast forward to completion, and then get my first job in a Devon hospital. And it was like, what the hell? This is not what I thought midwifery was going to be about. And yeah, maybe I was naive to think that actually what I needed to be able to do was run a CTG and a drip and all that stuff, and just be able to manage all that stuff and toe the line, follow the guidelines, keep your head down. And it was the complete opposite of what I had hoped for and my expectations of where I wanted to be. But at the end of the day, that was the reality. And to some extent, it's the reality still. 20 years down the line, you go into midwifery, I know there are students who have started their training and have gone in wanting to be with women, which midwife means, but with women birthing people, to support them to be autonomous practitioners, to be able to be holistic practitioners. And then they find that actually the system doesn't really allow for that. It doesn't facilitate it easily. We want people to be able to be in nice, neat boxes. And that's where this friction happens that makes it difficult to know, how do I manage to stay here? Now, you've got two choices. You keep going with your training, and then you qualify and you deal with it and you accept it. This is the system I'm in. Or at any point you go, I'm out and I'm going to find another way. Now, that other way is, we've got a podcast coming up on that, and I will be talking about people who've taken another route. But for many people, that's not a choice. You've either halfway through your training spent loads of money, built up massive debt, and think, the sunk cost fallacy, I've got to keep going with this, otherwise what else am I going to do? Possibly you're thinking, but this is what I really want to do, and I really want to work to be able to care for people, all people, in this system that we have. But how do I do that? How do I survive? So for me, it's been really helpful to understand and get to grips with why it is the way it is. So I went through my training and I was like a feminist, angry, I'm gonna get out there, change the world, enthusiastic, passionate, and also probably creating more friction than anything else. And the longer I've spent in the system, and actually where I have been working and the NHS Trust that I work, there's been massive changes, which has made life a lot easier for me to be able to work in a system that you feel is actually trying really hard to support choice and so on. But it's not to say there's not still part of me that I am a bit radical when it comes to my way of thinking, I guess. But understanding it has made a massive difference. And when I say understand, it's not I didn't understand it before, but being able to sort of put it into words, in my own head, and make peace with it, I guess. That's what I'm thinking. So when I'm thinking about it, I'm just checking my notes here. There's the system works on a massive scale. Like I said, 700,000 births a year. And society values institutions over individuality. It's culturally accepted generally in the 21st century, that we are providing care on a big scale. And if you're going to do it on a big scale, you want it to be equitable and you want it to be safe. So this is why you've got NICE guidelines, you've got trust guidelines. You also have to take, so I feel that the people that I work with are doing it because they care. So they want a safe pregnancy and birth and a safe outcome for your baby. It's not about money for the individual that works as midwives and doctors, the ones that I work with. It's not about money. You don't get paid more money for doing more sections. That's not how it works. At the NHS, there probably is more money available for sections, but that's not what I feel is driven in the NHS in the UK. It's not privatized at the moment. And it's all about, we have policies and so on, it's a drive for safety at all cost, which for the majority of people in the population, they want to know they can go and have a birth and a pregnancy, have a baby, and the safety and well-being of them and their baby is paramount above everything. That's not a bad thing, is it? Of course it's not. And for most people, they're happy with that. But when it comes down to the individual, then that's when it's your responsibility for yourself becomes in conflict with the responsibility of the healthcare system for everyone. Decision making is then taken out of your hands. So and that's right from the beginning. So right from the beginning, where we're checking the weight of your baby, and then you're going into schools and education and jobs, and everything tends to be, everything's on a big scale to make things safe and to make things easy and to put things into boxes. And for the majority of people are probably happy with that. And then there are other people that don't want to be put in a box. They want to be able to take responsibility for themselves. They want to be able to make their own decisions. And that's the person that I am, I guess. And that's why I find that I understand and support people who are like that. So a lot of it is about safety on a big scale. But that makes it difficult when it's the individual person who's saying, but I want to have it this way. How do we know, though, that you're not going to change your mind and then sue us when it all goes wrong? And that is another massive factor. The insurance issue goes along with that fear. So the fear, we live in a fear-based society. You only have to see everything that's come out of the pandemic and the way people have treated each other, and that it is a massive thing that's affected everybody. But have we used common sense in any way? I don't know. But that fear, so from an organisation point of view, the fear is that one, we don't want to cause a problem and that it's our fault, and two, that then there's cost implications to us, that because you're going to sue us. And then the insurance issue means that the trust then has to pay more money, and round the circle goes. And that one little individual that has said, I don't want you to, listen into my baby. I don't want you to do an examination. How do they know that individual, if something went wrong, is going to go, well, you didn't tell me this, X, Y, and Z. And that's just the way of thinking. And also, when you think about it, this is also something that helps me understand, is that it's like there's when I was doing my master's modules, I learnt about ontology, the study of the nature of reality, and that we all perceive reality in different ways. So a realist sees the world as objective. It can be observed, measured, and predicted. This is the basis of obstetric care and midwifery care in the UK, and also in Western modern society. In science-based society, we can predict it. So we look at big numbers, we look at quantitative data, we look at how many thousands of babies can we save from this, how many thousands need to be involved for the one that we save, or whatever it might be, whatever it is, but then a relativist, which I guess is me and a lot of us, sees the world as subjective, changing, and that there's a possibility of something different. And that's a more holistic way of looking at things. So qualitative data, which is looking at people's experiences and how they feel, and how, for example, how induction has impacted on their experience, how vaginal examinations impact on their experience, and how birth causes trauma and their experience of birth being traumatic. Those things are taken into account for somebody who is a relativist, seeing the world, that actually, by listening to people's experiences, that is just as important as the numbers that we use to predict whether an outcome is good or bad. That there is so much more to be taken into account. And we're seeing that with the NICE guidelines that are starting to, these new guidelines now have said, yeah, we need to actually talk to people and say to people, it may impact your experience. And that's not just some pie in the sky, hippie, floaty idea. Your experience of something will impact on your ability to be a mother or a parent, on your self-esteem, your well-being, your mental health, your emotional health. And that is as important as a healthy baby and healthy woman or birthing parent. And this is what has been missing for so long. And having conversations about that is really important. The other way to see it is like, this sort of like, if you want to go further into more a holistic way of thinking, is that there's like energies, the sort of masculine energy, which is very sort of linear and boxed and, doing and action. And then the feminine energy, which is more about feelings and flowing and evolving. I might have to talk about that later. But for me, that's understanding, actually, when you think, oh, I don't understand it, why is it like this? It's not because I feel, it's not because people are out there deliberately trying to sabotage people's experience of birth. It's because this is just the world that we live in. This is how it's done from cradle to grave, that we are working a lot of the times with big numbers, with populations of thousands of people, and we're trying to create a way that generally will fit most people, that's safe, that's productive, that's cost effective. None of those words fit with individual, with your own. It's not holistic, is it? It is what it is. And I have made peace with the fact that most people that I work with probably see things like that as well, and that we need to have a system that is safe, that's cost effective, and that is equitable for all service users. And that's not a bad thing. That's good. And as a student, understanding that is important. And as a newly qualified midwife, yeah, you're going to be thrown in at the deep end, doing all sorts of stuff. But every little bit, if you are the person who does see things from an individual perspective, with a holistic eye, with that, that sense of fluidity and wanting to make a difference to that one person in a very individual way, just hold on to that, because you can do it. When I have conversations in my clinic, whoever they are, I will always try to give the same balanced information and ask them how they're feeling and what's important to them and what does their heart tell them. And for some people, yes, everything that you give them from the guidelines is what they're happy with. And other people will go, well, actually, you know, maybe I want to know more about that. And there are different sources of information, and just being able to listen to somebody and help them make choices, that can make all the difference. Being holistic in your approach, so understanding that when you're in the birth space, just to sort of see that person as an individual, to be able to sit quietly, to listen, to guide, to, there are various different things that you can do, that you can bring to your practice, that will make a difference, that makes you an individual in the way that you practice, but makes you safe as well. And that's the other thing, that I know that there is two parts to me when I work as a midwife within the NHS. I have an employer, and I have guidelines to follow, and I have national guidelines, and I understand physiology and the reason behind things, and I make sure that I document everything. I have conversations with people, but ultimately at the end of the day, I know that everyone should be given the same information, and if that is the recommendation, I will tell you that is the recommendation. If I'm out of the system and when I'm working with people, I will, you know, you've got more time and there's more nuance, but there's no reason why you can't give the same information. But for example, so this is an example. I know that if you've birthed your baby physiologically, and even looking at the evidence, which is, you know, I think it's questionable about the evidence around physiological third stage, I feel that having a physiological third stage is an optimum way to birth your placenta without any synthetic hormone. But because I work in an NHS Trust, where national and local guidelines is that a managed third stage is recommended, that's what I'm going to tell everybody. I'm also going to tell them that that is also their choice. So it's important, you know, when you're working in the system, that you are safely working, and it's not arse covering, it's about recognizing that you are working as somebody within a massive system, and you're playing your part, and you can play your part in a way that is true to yourself. I'm not saying it's easy, it is challenging, and there's only so long often that you can do it. And I think because eventually that sort of cognitive dissonance sort of, you know, starts creating some friction in your body and your mind, but it can be done. And it might be that you dip in and you dip out, and that's the way I found that I have kept going. And what's wonderful is that when you're in, and if you work with a great bunch of colleagues who accept you as you are, you may just make a difference. And when you're out, you can be yourself and make a difference on the outside. So I think that's all I want to say. I hope it's been interesting, and please send me your messages. Find me on Instagram at evany.lynch. That's where I'm probably the most active. And also look out for the next podcast as well. And if I need to add any links, they'll be below, but I don't think I have anything on this one. So thank you for listening, and see you and hear from you next time.